Hello, how's it going? This is Eugene Myers. I am about to do an unboxing and a quick review of something I'm pretty excited to check out, the RetroUSB wireless controller for the NES and the RetroUSB AVS system. So I just got it today. They just were shipped out on Monday, so that was really fast shipping from RetroZone, and I'm going to open it up. I saw on Facebook that there's actually like a pretty cool, I wasn't sure if there'd be a box, nice packaging or anything for the product, but I saw on Facebook somebody already posted a picture, so I know that there's a cool box, or at least there's some packaging for it. And here it is. RetroUSB wireless gamepad. And then there's the opposite side of it. So I believe Bunny Boy from RetroUSB has been promising this product for a while. Everybody who purchased the first wave of the, or I guess maybe there was like a limited edition of the AVS, will get a wireless controller with their order, which I guess will be provided now. And it's kind of an interesting product. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to get it because the thing that's really interesting about this is it's made with microswitches, tactile buttons instead of the rubber membranes that you would get in like a traditional NES controller. And the only controller that I know that does that is the RetroN 5 controller, which is the worst controller I've ever used for anything. Most people don't like it. It's pretty terrible. And as soon as I got the RetroN 5 and set up the menu and everything, it went back into the box, and I haven't used it since. So I'm not sure how I'll like the micro switches. I like clicky keyboards. I have a Model M IBM computer keyboard. I like mechanical keyboards. I like the sound, but on a controller it seems a little bit strange. However, so I was on the fence about this, but I also realized that I'd never get a chance to try it unless I actually purchased one. So I'm hoping that I'm going to love it. If I don't, I probably can resell it, or just hold on to it as like a limited edition item. I actually don't know how limited edition it is, but anyway, I'm kind of excited. So it says it's a built-in 100-hour battery, recharges with standard mini USB. I believe it has a lithium LiPo battery inside, which I believe is a user replaceable part. Tactile micro switches for precise control. The LED blinks during turbo and charging. Adjustable turbo with separate rates for A and B buttons. The way that the turbo function works is kind of interesting. You hold the A or B button and then press turbo minus or turbo plus to adjust the repeat rate for that button. And you can use 4 of these controllers apparently. So I'm going to open this thing up and we'll see what's inside. I'm going to try to do this carefully in case I do have to sell it or just want to keep it collectible or whatever. I actually don't know if it's collectible. And there it is. Pretty cool. There you go. It comes in this little insert. I actually don't know if there's like a manual or anything in here, or if the manual is actually just what's on the back of the box. Let's see, how do I get this thing out of here? Okay, yeah, so it just flips open like this. You've got your little micro USB charger. I actually don't know if it comes previously charged or not. I guess I'll find out. Here's the receiver, and actually I don't know how this is charged, or like this. Oh, you know what? This just gets power from the system, right, when you plug it in. So, and then I don't know what that switch does. Maybe it turns it on and off. I don't know. Guess we'll find out. Or maybe not, because I don't see a manual in here. So there's that. I'm just going to put that back. And here's the controller itself. All right, so it's interesting. You can already hear like it's very different from a regular NES controller. Oh, it's got power. It powered on as soon as I pressed a button, which is interesting. Okay, so yeah, this is the D-pad, and it's interesting. It's very different feeling from a rubber membrane. Actually, this feels pretty good. I was expecting it to sound clickier than that, but this doesn't sound. This sounds about the way I think a sort of a new NES controller with like fresh membranes would sound, or should sound anyway. And then these are obviously, these are very different. The certain select buttons are very different because they're not rubber, they're not silicone. buttons are actually real buttons. And then there's turbo and all that. And then there's a switch down here on the bottom, which I guess is, I don't know. That was what the box points as, is 4-player compatible. And then there's just the charging port down here. So actually, let's just switch over here so you can kind of see a little bit more how this thing looks. Yeah, this is a terrible camera, unfortunately. Probably been better off just holding up to the other camera. So that's the back of it. That's the front of it. We got power. I am tempted to open this thing up, but I probably will not right now because it's an expensive controller. This thing retails for about $65 on the RetroUSB website. Like I said, I was on the fence about it. I'm not sure how I'll like playing with it, but just another little comparison. So you can see the shape is designed to fit your hands a little bit better than a regular NES controller, and actually it feels pretty nice. The way that I'm holding it, the way that I naturally feel like holding it is kind of like this, and that seems pretty nice. Actually, even better than the Hyperkin Cadet, which I just tried out recently. So just for comparison's sake, this is the original NES controller. You can see they're, obviously they're pretty similar. I believe that the buttons should line up properly. I'm terrible at pointing this thing out. The buttons should line up. And what I hear is that you can actually take the PCB out of the RetroUSB controller and transplant it into the shell for a regular NES controller. And again, just for comparison's sakes, like this is how the D-pad on a NES controller sounds. This is not a particularly good controller. I think this one might be a little bit older. I think it still has the original rubber membranes inside this, but there's hardly any sound at all to it. And it feels very mushy compared to the tactile buttons on the RetroUSB controller. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out in gameplay. And then also, so the design of it, a lot of people have been kind of complaining about how it looks. I think it looks fine. I think it looks retro. It looks very retro to me. The color seems consistent with the original NES and also probably with the AVS. I don't actually own an AVS, but I think it fits in. It's not flashy. It's function over form, and I think the form is actually fine. Like I don't need it to look really wacky. Folks have also pointed out it kind of takes it may have been inspired by the shape of the NES Max controller. It's not quite, it's a little bit wider than that. Looks a little bit more comfortable, honestly. But it's very similar, it feels very similar. I think the wider controller for the RetroUSB is much nicer. And these buttons, of course, are also pretty, silent. They're mushy. These are actual buttons, but also these are hard buttons, but also silicon membrane. And you can see this is a modified NES Max controller, where I took out that little disc and replaced it with a thumbstick from a Xbox controller, and it works a little bit better, but it's still not a great controller. I don't think so. I don't really use it for much. I think it's probably good for arcade games and that sort of thing. So that's kind of about it, I think. I'm definitely interested in seeing how this thing plays. Want to test it out on some games, and it looks like it's got power, so it should work just like right out of the box. Kind of surprised there's not more of a manual, but I guess there isn't really much to it. I'm sort of really surprised and pleased at how it feels. Feels pretty nice. I'm looking forward to giving it a try. So I'm not going to do a teardown because I don't really want to dismantle my $65 controller just yet. I will point out, it's interesting, I'm not sure if you can see that, but no, because this camera is terrible. But let me try bringing it up here. This is the seam on the left-hand side, and it's kind of not flush compared to this side. I'm not sure what that means. I don't know if that's a problem or not. you know, it's a little bit loose, and I don't know, you know, there's no screw over there, so I'm not sure how to remedy that. I suppose I can contact RetroUSB if it looks like it's going to be a problem. Oh, okay, so this switch on the bottom here has 1, 2, 3, 3 spots. 1, 2, 3. No, it has 4 spots. So that's how you. That's the 4-player controller. You can set your controller to one of those 4, which is kind of interesting. I haven't seen that before. This is obviously meant to be an alternative to the 8-bit-do NES 30 or the NES 30 Pro, which is the Bluetooth wireless controllers. Which apparently people have said have lag. I haven't noticed it myself, but I've been playing it mostly on a RetroN 5 or the NES Classic, which kind of inherently have their own lag, or certainly have a lag on HD TV, which again is fairly imperceptible to me. It hasn't bothered me. I played Ghosts and Goblins on the RetroN 5 mostly with my NES 30 controller. I played through Kid Icarus. I've been playing Ninja Gaiden 3, and those are all games that require you know, really close timing and you know, fast reflexes, and should be very sensitive, I think, to lag. So I haven't really noticed a problem with them personally, but you know, I'm sure other people, if they say they have, then they have. But this is supposed to be rated at having negligible lag. Bunny Boy said that, you know, Tetris players, like competing Tetris players, have tried it out and had no problems with it. So I'm you know, looking forward to using this thing, and I'm a little bothered by this seam thing here going on here, but you know, I'm gonna give it a try, and then I'll give my feedback on it. Okay, so I'm back here. I'm gonna do a little game testing, console testing with the RetroUSB wireless controller, which is intended for the NES and also the AVS, but also probably work on clone consoles. I'm going to test it on the RetroN 5 as well, and just kind of see how that goes. But for now, I just want to give it a try with a game. And one thing I had failed to mention is that this controller uses RF on the same frequency as Bluetooth, but without any of the potential lag. So that's how it's doing its wireless. And I realized that the switches that are on the receiver here also have 4 stops on it, so I think that's how you configure this to be a player 1 through 4 kind of game. So so yeah, I'm gonna plug this into my NES into controller port 1. See how it fits, and RetroUSB also does like extension cords and like adapters to make a NES controller work on a USB port and things like that, and they've always felt really good. Like the molding or the way that they do the plugs, it's always felt really good. So that it doesn't feel too surprising. The quality on this is really nice, and definitely like better than the 8-bit-do. I don't actually have the 8-bit-do receiver for the NES, but I have the one for the Wii, or for the NES Classic and for the Wii U or the Wii, and it was you know, it doesn't feel quite as good here. So I'm gonna test it out on a game. Like I said, my go-to games for testing are Super Mario Bros. 3 and Battletoads. The controller had turned on automatically when I pressed a button last time, and it times out after a certain period of time automatically, so there's not like a power switch or anything like that. And since it's been rated for 100 hours, you know, I guess it doesn't really matter. I don't know how long it takes to recharge or anything like that, but I'm hoping that there's enough charge. I should have been recharging it while I was away, but I'm going to give it a try. So, yep. Yeah, it's interesting. I just pressed start on the controller, and immediately powered on, and immediately the game started. So that's kind of cool. There's no, as far as I know, there's no plug-and-play solution like that works. Like even with the 8-bit-do NES 30, one of the things that I hate is that you have to sync it up to the console. Sometimes it doesn't sync up right. Usually it syncs up with the RetroN 5 pretty well, but I've had a lot of problems with it in the NES Classic. So I'm really excited that this worked right away. That feels really good, really responsive. So let's see. Oh, I missed that Goomba, but I don't think that's the controller's fault. Alright. Takes a little bit of getting used to, for sure, but it feels pretty good. You know, it's just that the feedback on the buttons is different, but kind of good different, I think. And it actually is kind of nice to know that I don't have to worry about the gamepads wearing out, or the rubber membranes wearing out. I'm a little bit bothered by the that seam on the side there, but it's not really a deal breaker. And I wonder if I did open it up, if it would be better. So here's my test. Yep, that's really easy. Okay, so Super Mario Brothers 3 passed the test. Really responsive. It feels really good. Definitely no lag that I can tell. Again, I'm not particularly sensitive to lag, but I was pretty happy with that. So let me switch to Battletoads and see how I do with that. That's what you get with the front loader, but it's still pretty reliable. All right. And again, I didn't try the turbo function. I guess maybe I'll pop another game in and test out the turbo function after this, because people are going to care about that. I don't really use turbo, but people are going to care about it. So yeah, this feels really good. Really, definitely feels like a high quality product. Yep, and that's pretty flawless. Nice. Very responsive. Yeah, so there I was just finding that, it was taking a little bit of getting used to the feel of the buttons. They don't, and oddly it's because they're like so new, and yeah, I'm not gonna catch that. There's not as much give on them as there is on a rubber membrane controller. So some of the things that I would normally, I usually find a little bit more comfortable to kind of switch from B to A on the fly. So it'll be interesting to see how it does with a shooter like Mega Man or something like that. I should have switched over to the actual gameplay footage, huh? Well, that was my fault. Okay. was doing there. Yeah, the controller feels really good. And here's the real test. Yeah, I kind of am tempted just to open this thing up to see what it's like on the inside, because I imagine because it has these micro switches that maybe the D-pad it might be shaped differently. I don't know. Anyway, so that went really well. I'm going to test out one more game. I'm going to try out, just because it's like right here, I'm going to try out a homebrew Battle Kid, which I can try out the turbo function, how that goes. So yeah, I have to say this is actually really good. So far so good anyway. Alright, so that's normal fire. And then I'm going to hold down B and hit plus once. Alright, I'm going to hold it down and press plus again. Again. Alright, I think that's maximum then. Now, I don't know how you would cancel it. Oh, no. Oh, wow, that's pretty fast. Alright, and then I don't know how you would cancel it. I guess you just keep hitting minus until it goes away. Interesting, okay. So yeah, the way that it works is you hold down the B or the A button, and then you use, these are actually plus and minus buttons above the start and select. And so you'd hold down the button and you hit plus to increase the speed, and you hit minus to decrease the speed, which is kind of really neat. Like I like that that feature. There are other ways to do it, like my Hudson Card thing has a slider switch, so you can set it to 3 different settings. And then, of course, on the NES Advantage, you have you know, knobs and things like that. So, yeah, that's. I have to say this is really surprisingly, like not surprisingly, because I was expecting it to be good, but I actually really like this. The buttons are. It takes a little bit of getting used to have the micro switches, but it doesn't feel, it's not as clicky and cheap sounding as the RetroN 5 controller, which I wish I'd pulled out just to show you guys, but that sounds so cheap, like very different from this. This feels very high quality. The D-pad feels really good, which you know, again, I thought would be a little bit strange to have that with a tactile switch, but you know, I think I spent, it was money well spent. I don't expect I'll be selling this or returning it or anything like that. Again, my only question is this this bit here is just not flush, and it's sort of bugging me, and I don't know if it's going to get worse, or if I take it apart and put it back together again, if that'll affect anything. That's like kind of the only flaw that I can see in it. Maybe a little scratch next to the USB charger. I'll have to try charging this thing up to see how that goes as well. You know, it's also interesting just kind of taking another look at this thing compared to like the Hyperkin Cadet, which I just reviewed. Like the buttons, the A and B buttons have the right shape, but they have a different texture. They have kind of like a matte texture versus like this sort of smooth and shiny thing on the texture on the regular NES and the Hyperkin controller. And even the D-pad feels just like a little bit, it's like matte. So it's kind of got a lot of little nice touches to it, and it's got the RetroUSB logo kind of engraved in it, or just like printed into the plastic. You know, overall, I'd say this is a pretty solid piece of hardware, and I don't hesitate to recommend this if you are looking for kind of, you know, a wireless solution. I'd say this is definitely worth looking into. It's twice as expensive as the NES 30. The NES 30 out of the box, like I'm a big fan of the NES 30. I use it all the time. The NES 30 out of the box, like the D-pad, I had problems with it. I had to replace the D-pad with one from an original NES controller to make it work, and even the buttons felt not as responsive, like, or just like a little bit mushier, and so it's still not perfect. It feels a lot cheaper than this does, and I'm looking forward to giving this a try on the RetroN 5 to see if that thing works. And I think this is probably going to replace the NES 30 for me, because being able to just get it started without having to sync up or anything is huge. And the longer battery life and the more responsive controls, it also just feels better than the NES 30, which is just like an original NES controller. So yeah, I don't hesitate to recommend this thing. I'll give an update if that opinion changes or if I run into any problems. But you know, give it a try. It's at I'll put a link in the comments, but it's RetroUSB.com. And you know, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe. I stream NES games every week. I don't know if I'll use this on my toaster NES down here, because I have it from a CRT, and there's no reason to have a wireless controller because I'm literally sitting like 2 feet away from my TV. But it also feels really good, so I might just want to start using this one more often. I don't know, but this will definitely be great upstairs, you know, where my couch is like farther away from my HD TV, and I'm gonna go test that out right now. And I might do a lag test at some point later on if there's any interest in that. Again, I'm not particularly sensitive to it, but I can run the 240 test suite on the RetroN 5, and I can compare the lag to an 8-bit DOE with like slow motion to kind of see if there's a difference. But anyway, that's about it. Yeah, check it out if you you know, at the point where you're spending $170 or $80 on an AVS and spending another $60 for a quality controller that goes with that experience, probably doesn't seem too out of the realm of possibility for you. But you know, I haven't quite pulled the trigger on the AVS yet, but this kind of encourages me, because if it's as well put together as this thing is, then I'm definitely impressed. So well worth the wait, well worth the money. Thanks, guys.